I've always believed. But living in my first one-bedroom apartment confirmed that there is paranormal shit in this world that defies explanation. This is one of the many events that took place there. My boyfriend, now husband, was sleeping beside me. My bare feet were sticking out of the blankets and something had a hold of my right foot just under my big toe. Not painfully, just gently holding on. I did not look down. I pulled the covers over my head, freaked me all the hell out, and lasted a good 5 minutes before whatever it was let go. I didn't say anything to my boyfriend. 2 nights later, it happened again. This time I was dead asleep and the feeling woke me up. Again, I freaked out, but I looked down to my feet and nothing was there. It was still gripping my foot. So I whispered, "Hey, let go of that, please." And a few seconds later, it let go. The next day, I told my boyfriend, who kinda laughed it off. He said if it grabs my foot again, wake him up. So a week later, when it got a hold of my foot again, I woke him up. He looked down and shrugged because he didn't see anything. But I can tell he was bugged out a little. A few days later, he woke me up in the middle of the night, shaking like a leaf. He whispered, "Honey, it's got my foot." There are 3 times that I can think of off the top of my head. When I was 3-ish, I had 2 imaginary friends. I don't remember their names anymore. It was forever ago. It was something simple and white though, like Tommy or Timmy for both. These friends were both boys, both the same age and looked exactly the same. They both wore overalls and no shirt and were really dirty. One carried a pitchfork. Not like the devil, but like the old hay pitchfork for farming. And the other little boy carried a shovel. They were generally nice. Sometimes they would get angry, but it was never a big deal. They showed up at the foot of my bed every single morning. My parents pretty much ignored it. When I got older, we were talking about imaginary friends at my grandma's house, and I brought them up. My grandma went white. Apparently, the 2 little boys were my great-great-grandfather's twin boys from his first marriage. They were freebleeders, and one day when they were playing outside on the farm, they got caught up in the barbed wire fence. By the time anyone found them, it was too late. The second time was when I was about 4. I was asleep and my parents were watching a scary movie. They heard something thumping against the house, but they thought it might just be the wind or something normal. They went to sleep. I got up the next morning and went outside to play. Everything was covered in blood. It was smeared on the swing set, on the house, smeared around the pool, and it was all over the grass. The only thing that was clean was the inside of my pool. It was crystal clear, not even a drop of blood in it. I went in the house to tell my mom something was off, and when she saw me covered in blood, she freaked out. After she determined I wasn't the one bleeding, she ran outside, looked around and screamed for my father. We never figured it out. There were no dead animals, no buckets, seemingly no source, and there was no possible way for a person to have gotten it on the house like that. The other time was soon after the blood incident. So my dad didn't love me when I was little, and my mom had to work like 3 jobs. He would sleep in every day and not feed me, so I had to learn to get up and go make my own food. I'd watch Blue's Clues until my mom got back. Well, one day I got up and nothing was off until I stuck my head around the corner to see if my father was still asleep. He was. That wasn't the problem. The problem was the massive dark red humanoid figure looming over his sleeping form. I was a brave little shit, so I took a stance in the middle of the hall facing it and screamed at it to get away from my dad. It turned its head towards me. It didn't have a face. There were just 2 circles, one slightly smaller than the other. The small one in what was supposed to be the T-zone, and the larger one was where the mouth would be. But there were no holes. It growled like a dog, but louder. Much, much louder. Feel it in your bones loud. I ran and hid under my bed. After a little while, I figured if it was going to find me, it would check under the bed first. So I checked if coast was clear, ran into the living room and hid there by the front door until my mother got home. I still don't know what that thing was. I've never seen it again, and I've never found any legends about it. This past summer, my grandmother suddenly passed away from a stroke. The day after, I was sitting in my living room with my mother when the TV suddenly turned on and started blaring Japanese music on YouTube. She was Japanese. We checked the source and turns out it was a laptop connected to the TV. It was turned off. We were all freaked out, so we checked all our YouTube account histories and nothing came up. A few days later, my brother was looking for videos of her to play at the funeral. And he found a video of her looking back and waving. The date stamp on the video was the exact date and time as when she passed away, just a few years earlier. After the funeral, all of my house's appliances started breaking down. The fire alarm, washer, fridge, microwave, all within a few days. We got everything fixed up except for the microwave, which had to be taken to a specific factory for repairs. When my dad drove out there, he realized that the factory was right beside my grandmother's grave. Around the same time, my mom, who always drove my grandmother around, started noticing that her car's seatbelt alarm, the one that goes off when you sit in the passenger seat without a seatbelt, started going off when she was driving alone. I've never been a believer in ghosts before, but it oddly gives me a sense of comfort knowing my grandmother could still be with me. Disclaimer, I suck at telling stories. Also, this was years ago, so please forgive me if it's confusing or if there's any errors. Alrighty, here I go. When I was around 12, my family and I moved into a new house. Money was tight, so we were renting it. It was a fairly nice place and newly built, so I liked the sound of it. We arrived to start unpacking, and I stepped inside to check the place out, but it just seemed off. I told my mom, and she tells me that it's because it's a fairly new place and just to get over it. So I do. On the first night, I'm sitting in what's supposed to be the dining room playing games on my DS. And I hear my little brother, who's around 6, say, "Hey guys." And when I look over, I see that all of the cupboards are now open. Now, none of us could have reached the ones on the top because they were way too high. My dad was the tallest at the time, and even he was only 5'6", and somehow my sister manages to convince everyone that I'm playing a prank. But I'm really freaking the fuck out. But I somehow managed to convince myself that it was my sister trying to get me in trouble. After a few days, we all begin to notice weird things. Shadows moving past windows, our puppy barking at one specific corner of the house. And the shed in the backyard was a no-go zone for everybody, even our puppy. One Saturday morning, we wake up early while our mom was taking our dad to work. And my sister and I are watching cartoons. Our little brother screams and runs to us crying. He says he saw a witch. We hide in our rooms and we tell Mom when she gets back. She asked my brother what he saw, and he described a black, shadowy figure. And she obviously thinks it was just his imagination, and dismisses it. I'm scared shitless by all these weird things, and I asked my sister if I can sleep with her. And she agrees. That night, I wake up early. I look into the corner of the room and it's there. Just fucking standing, staring. It scared the fuck out of me. And I run to Dad, and he lets me sleep by him and Mom. After 3 months, we moved the fuck out. Just a few months ago, Mom and I got to talking about the house, and she told me that she thinks that it was haunted, and I asked her why. She said something that just scared me. She said, "I saw a black shadow in the corner of your room when you were a kid. It was just staring at you. I used to hide crosses in your room, thinking it would scare it off." Also, after doing some research, my mom found out that the owner's husband had died in that house. Okay, so to start off, let me say that before this happened, my dad was a very, very, very close-minded and 100% absolutely did not believe in ghosts or anything supernatural. I didn't believe in them either way, either. Ghosts might be real, they might not. I had a, whatever kind of attitude. That was until the incident in 2014. I used to work late nights, and before I had learned to drive, my dad would pick me up from work. It was about 11:30 p.m. and we were heading home. Our house is about 3 blocks from a cemetery, which isn't really that relevant, but still a cool fact to mention. Nobody else was around, and we were driving past the cemetery, heading toward a small intersection. Next thing we knew, right in the middle of the intersection, our car's headlights lit up a figure of a man standing right in the middle of the road, facing our car. I had already started to push my foot into the passenger footwell, mimicking braking, and I was about to warn my dad to slow down because of the man standing in the road. But I didn't even get the words out of my mouth. He had already started to brake. Next thing we knew, we're driving through the exact spot the man had been standing. And there's nobody to be seen, vanished into thin air. My dad momentarily slowed the car down to look for him, but there was absolutely no man to be seen, and no place for anybody to hide on the sides of the road. At this point, my dad and I hadn't said anything to each other. This whole incident had taken place over the course of about 20 seconds, and it had happened in complete silence from both of us. We kept driving towards home, each of us figuring we were just going crazy and our minds were playing tricks. About 20 seconds later, we both looked at each other and said at the exact same time, "Where did he go?" Once we arrived home and my dad had parked in the driveway, we turned to face each other and started discussing what we saw. And how I was about to warn him to slow down, but he already done so, because he saw a man standing in the road too. We had the exact same recollections of what we saw, and we had both reacted accordingly. And despite not saying a word to each other the whole time, we both recalled the exact same details, right down to the man and what he was wearing. It was absolutely hair-raising. We couldn't believe it, and I couldn't believe that my anti-supernatural dad was agreeing, because he'd seen it and reacted too. We both agree that if it had been just one of us that saw the man, we would have just assumed it was a hallucination or our minds playing tricks. But this wasn't the case. We both saw the same thing. We don't speak of the incident very often because people think we're lying. But it was the moment that we both started believing in ghosts.